I'm Liz Moore, and the program manager for the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative, if you haven't met me before. We are missing some attendees, and they are coming, I think, with our second speaker, who also isn't here quite yet, but we have his presentation, so we know he's coming. He confirmed to me last night, so I expect.
So you can do the presentation.
I don't know anything about engineering, so that would be a dicey presentation. But anyway, this is the last of the faculty ethics roundtables for this semester. We have a very robust program going for next semester. We'll be doing one a month the whole way through, because we have a lot of fellows who have a lot of great stuff that we want to make sure that it's out there for you to access and to use. We also are finishing up a really robust semester. I think Tracy and I are both pretty tired from all the things we've been doing.
I brought flats to wear, so that's kind of bad.
But most of all, we want to thank you for attending and for coming, and we are recording this. This will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel that we're creating and working on. We've got it started, so you can always refer back, so you can hear Susan over and over as many times as you would like. We'll track them, yes, and see how
Oh boy! And actually, we're going to move these chairs so that they can see the really good.
Yeah. Okay. And you have in front of you a piece of paper that has my good idea in there. And we're asking, as the presentations move along, if you see an application or some great idea that you think that could work, it doesn't have to necessarily be related to this topic, but something just springs in your head, we ask that you write them down. We collected them from last year, and it was pretty amazing. They're all great. And we use that as a catalyst to decide what we should do for the coming year, what areas we might want to look at. So please take a moment to fill those out if you have that aha moment. And we also have a little business card which has all our Daniels Fund ethics on them. And you can tuck them into your pocket and take them with you so that you can always be principle-based ethic decision making. In case you're a little bit fuzzy, just pull out that card. And I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, the director of the Daniels Fund.
Thank you, Liz. And make sure today you get breakfast and sit down with us, okay? She tends to hover. Thank you so much for coming. I see so many new faces, so we're going to have to do introductions. Just because we have some new people here, some of you might not be aware of what the ethics fellows, how they're selected, the process. This year we're going to hear two fellows that are for the year 2017-2018 school year. And each college was asked to at least identify one person. We actually put the call out. I don't know if Dean mentioned it or if you just heard about it. I think you came to one of the roundtables and you talked.
My team mentioned it to me, and then I came to one of the roundtables to see who you were.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the way. So what it is right now we only offer the fellows to full-time faculty. They do not have to be tenure track. They can be instructors and non-tenure track. We have not yet done any type of fellows for staff, although maybe that might be something that we talk about in the future, or a different type of program. What it is they receive a stipend. And it's so much money, they're just flowing in dough, right? By the time they take out all taxes and stuff, right? How to incorporate the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative principles that are listed here into their coursework. Some of the people will do it as an assignment, sometimes it's a whole class. Other times it might be not even in the class, but more of a workshop that is done with the community and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity for the fellows. What they don't know, and I tell them after they've agreed, that once a fellow, always a fellow. So they never get out of it. In fact, they have their own web page as an ethics fellow on our website. So the video of the presentation or any other materials that you provide, like a syllabus or something like that, they will all be available on our website. So if you missed, you have someone that you know that wasn't able to attend, you can say, oh, you'll be able to hear it, or you should have seen this, and all the materials will be right there for you. So with that, I would like some introductions. I'm the director of the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative at UCCS and an associate professor in marketing and international business at the College of Business. And so if we go around the room, let's start with you, if you don't mind.
I'm Linda Goodwin. I'm an admissions counselor here at UCCS, and I spend about a third of my year off campus visiting high schools and community colleges around Colorado and out of state.
I'm David Lee. I teach here at the College of Business in the management department, and I teach creativity.
I'm Terrell Maton. I'm a retired Time Warner executive, and I work with the Air Force Academy Wing Chaplain.
I'm Matt Radcliffe. I'm the digital strategist for Bixby Community College. I'm also an alum of the College of Business here, and did some Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative stuff with Tracy and Liz as a student.
I'm Les Decamp. I'm with the Electrical Computer Engineering Department, senior instructor. I did 20 years industry, and now I teach.
I've been introduced.
I'm Teresa Henderson. I'm a member of the community and thought the topic was interesting. I'm Carol Trailer. I'm in graduate nursing at Bethel.
Jan Montroy, undergraduate nursing, Bethel, lab coordinator, simulation faculty, clinical instructor, and work with students.
Dan Likens, Department of Biology. I teach anatomy and physiology primarily. Air Force Academy graduate, doing a lot of stuff with honor and whatnot. I used to teach at the Air Force Academy for about a decade.
Susan Beakey, undergraduate nursing.
I'm assistant professor in computer science. I teach operating system currently, have close to 60 students. And then in the spring, I'm going to teach privacy and internet censorship. The reason is I am also one of the fellows, and I am using this opportunity to bring the internet side of ethics to students and teach like people like how different companies are tracking us, like Facebook and Twitter. And how different how different governments are like blocking access to people. Say you are in a different country like Iran or in China, certain websites are blocked. How those things are done.
So let me give you a little background. I'm Sue Davis. I'm a senior instructor at Bethel. I have been at Bethel for 10 years. I teach all kinds of things. I teach fundamentals of nursing. I teach basic EKG interpretation. I teach leadership and management. I'm going through my classes. I teach a clinical craft intensive course twice a year. I am a clinical instructor. I have launched this ethics class. I also teach freshmen in the GPS seminar program. I think that's all I'm going to do right now. And it's, ethics to me is the core of who we are as individuals. You know how you say, go for the jugular, go for their heart? To me, that's ethics. And ethics can provide peace of mind and tranquility and serenity, or it can provide the opposite of that, stress and angst and whatever. It can also provide fulfillment and satisfaction, or it can provide all kinds of disruption. And so I'm a very big proponent of ethics. I think it's at the heart of who we are as people, for good or bad. It affects leadership, as we know, and good and bad. And so back last spring, I had decided that before I even knew about the Daniels Ethics Initiative, I wanted to develop an ethics course to teach to nursing. Because as nurses, whether it's a registered nurse, a nurse practitioner, or a student, when you walk into your professional life that day, you will be faced with an ethical issue every single day, at least one, every time you encounter your situation. We have them all the time. And I have been teaching through all my other courses, I've been teaching a snippet of ethics, but it wasn't enough. And for example, one of the things that I've taught, especially to my sophomore fundamental students, is that when medications are due at 9 o'clock in the morning, if you're running late and you don't get to them, give them until 10:15, do you chart them at 10:15? Or do you just click the button and it'll automatically chart it at 9 o'clock? That's an ethical issue. And so we talk about that. So, and the bottom line for me is, at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, when all is said and done, you have to like the person looking back at you in the mirror. And if you can't, then to me there's an issue. So last spring I decided I wanted to somehow teach an ethics course. So at Bethel there's a curriculum committee that you have to pass class approval through. So in March I put together my course outline and passed it through the curriculum committee. And then, so I had the approval. And then in April, for my merit review with the dean, she mentioned to me about the Daniels Ethics Initiative in the fellow program. And she said, why don't you check it out? And I went, oh, okay. So in May, there was a round table. And so I came to it to see who these Daniel ethics people were. I don't want to find out who I'm dealing with before I scope this out. So, and I was thrilled to death, because for me, it was a breath of fresh air being in a room with like-minded people who have the same values I do, believe in the same things, even though we practice in different areas. The core was the same, and there was so much I could learn. So I applied, was accepted in June, and actually started in mid-August as a fellow, not knowing what the heck I was doing. Still don't. But my course launched this fall when class started. So the course that I developed is entitled Ethical Decision Making in Nursing. It's one of the challenges of the course, you can see this in my PowerPoint, is it's an online class. So with that, you have all the challenges of the online environment as far as engagement and interaction and all of that. But I absolutely loved this class. We had a good time. I had a very good showing for the first time this was ever offered. And so what I want to do today for you all is for my project, what I did was I developed this course and launched it and taught it. It is by no means perfect. There's a lot of things. I came to the round table a month ago with a gal from Pueblo. I can't remember her name. What was her name?
Susan.
Yeah, and she had a really good idea that I gleaned from her presentation that I'm going to put in my course in the spring. That I really liked what she did with one of the things. So, so what the rest of my time here today is, I'm going to walk you through what we did, what we covered, how we did what we did. The class that, this particular class went with the RN to BSN option of the program, which is people who are already nurses. They have a 2-year degree, and they're working as nurses in the profession, and they're coming back to Bethel to get their 4-year degree. Also in the course, there are students called dual enrollment, which is a consortium agreement with the Southern Colorado and the Northern Colorado community colleges. And so there are some dual enrolled students, which means there's people from Pikes Peak or Arapahoe Community College or up in Fort Collins or down in New Mexico or wherever that are in a 2-year program still taking those courses. They're not an RN yet, but they are working towards that. So they're kind of double dipping to get their 2-year degree and their 4-year degree at the same time. This class was not restricted to the RN to BSN program. I didn't limit it to that, but that's where it was pretty much offered. And so pretty much that was my entire class. I did have one traditional student initially for the first week, but she dropped. So, what you're gonna see in here, I've included in this PowerPoint some, everything in here is what was included in the course. I just took out some nuggets from it for you, because in a short presentation, we obviously can't go through the complete course. But, so I wanted to show you that. So I really liked this. I started off the class with this quote: "The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet." So that video was a video that I used to branch off into a discussion in one of the weeks. So I like this. Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. So I have a job for you. Here is something I'm going to read to you, and then you have a moment. I'm going to let you talk to your neighbor. You don't have to do it by yourself. So here's a moral dilemma that actually took place at a job interview. You're driving along in your car on a wild, stormy night. You pass by a bus stop, and you see 3 people waiting for the bus. 1, an old lady who looks as if she's about to die. 2, an old friend who once saved your life. And 3, the perfect man or woman that you've been dreaming about. Which one would you choose to offer a ride to, knowing that there could only be 1 passenger in your car? Think before you continue reading. This is a moral, ethical dilemma that was once actually used as part of a job interview. So you can think about it. I'll give you like 30 seconds and talk to your friends or your people that sit next to you and decide what you can do. Okay, you guys got it?
Sure.
You made your choice? Okay.
That's a great answer.
Answers. You could pick up the old lady because she was going to die, and thus you could save her first. Or you could take the old friend because he once saved your life, and this would be a perfect chance for you to pay him back. However, you may never be able to find your perfect dream lover again.
Yes, here we go.
Okay? The candidate who was hired out of 200 applicants had no trouble coming up with this answer. So what was his answer? He simply said, "I'd give the car keys to my old friend, have him drive the lady to the hospital, and I'd stay behind and wait for the bus with the woman in my dream." So the goal here was think outside the box. Don't be caged in. And for anybody that knows me, that's who I am. I tend to think outside the box. And so that's what this class is all about, is thinking outside the box. So here is my project that I did. And I really, really like the Daniels ethics, policies, principles. You guys have them on that little card in front of you. I encourage you to take it with you. Because each one of them covers every possible aspect and angle of ethics. In any ethical, moral dilemma that you face, it won't necessarily cover all of these, but one of them will always be hit. So you have integrity, trust, accountability, transparency, fairness, respect, rule of law, and viability. And these are so apropos to nursing. They're apropos to everything, but to nursing, they're like critical. So what I did in the class is I took those Daniel ethics principles and married it to the Code of Ethics for Nurses. And throughout the class, I broke them up, and I took 3 principles at a shot, and I'm going to show you how I did that. And we talked about them to cover, because I'm not sure, to be very honest with you, that if you went up and talked to every nurse, that they would know what the Code of Ethics is. I'd be surprised if they did. So, you'll see, I'll go back here, Principle 1, Provision 1 in the Code of Nursing Ethics, and you'll see how closely, if you look at that little card that's in front of you, you can match it up to a Daniels principle. The nurse practices with compassion and respect for the inherent dignity, worth, and unique attributes of each and every person. The nurse's provision 2 is the nurse's primary commitment is to the patient, whether an individual, family, group, community, or population. Provision 3, the nurse promotes, advocates for, and protects the rights, health, and safety of the patient. So you can see those in all principles. What I did with those 3 these were the things we did in class. We started off by recognizing the ethical terms. What does it mean to say morals and virtues and ethics? What do those words mean? And we talked about what it meant to be ethically competent. So what does it mean to practice in an ethical manner? To be proficient. One of the pillars in nursing presently is a lady by the name of Patricia Benner, and in her novice to expert. So how do you become an expert ethically? So we talked about that. And then one of their assignments was they had to write a paper, it was a reflection paper about what it entitled My Nursing Ethic. What is your personal ethic for nursing as you practice? Those were very interesting. Then we talked about theories and principles, and this is where we took the Daniel's ethics principles and talked about them, and we applied them to a situation. They talked about an individual situation that they encountered, and a lot of times it was something that they encountered that week at work. And one of the things, I mentioned this in the last forum that came up during this time of the class time, was that whole thing about the nurse in Utah that got accosted by the police and arrested. We talked about, was she performing ethically in her job? Did she do what was right? What about the policeman? How did he do? And we had a discussion about that. So I wanted to lay the foundation so they would understand what are some ethical theories, because there's several of them, and what the words mean. And then the next thing we moved to was, how do you make an ethical decision? What is the process to go through when you're confronted with a problem, to how do you work through the problem, the ethical situation that you're looking at, to arrive at a decision. So there's different processes that you can use. They read about them, we talked about them, and then they actually did a case study and applied their decision-making process to this particular case study. It involved integrity. I like this. Integrity is choosing your thoughts and actions based on values rather than personal gain. And so I'm going to pass this around for you. You can take one and pass it. This is the actual case study from the course. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes to read it, and then talk to your neighbor. And the bottom line question is, what should Miss Fain do? What should she do? This is not an uncommon example. This happens to our students. I've had discussions about this with students. So this is a very common, unfortunately I hate to tell you that, but it's a very common problem. So, because one of the things too that I wanted to let you know as this is going around is, you've heard this before, but nurses as a profession by the general public in the Gallup poll are the most trusted profession. It's like 85%. Okay, so if nurses are the most trusted profession, we're just people. So we need to teach our people how to be ethical. So I'll let you read that real quick.
This is a good case, yeah.
You like this case?
It's really good.
Did you write it, or did you get it from a?
Obviously, you gotta write it.
I had the idea.
Yeah.
So this case is not unique. It's happened. It happens all the time.
Yes.
So for those of you that aren't medical, unfortunately, I hate to bust your bubble, but if as nurses are the most trusted profession, this is a problem. okay?
This happens in more than just nursing, too.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a problem, all right? So what do you all see as the ethical dilemma here? Look at your little card from the Daniel Principles and pick out one of the principles that is the problem here. Integrity.
Accountability,
Accountability.
respect,
Respect.
There it is.
rule of law.
Just a few. Okay? Just a few.
Viability.
Yeah, just a few. So what the students had to do with this is they had to write a paper and discuss what the issues were, walk it through an ethical decision-making process, and come up with a decision. You couldn't just say, this is my decision. You had to state what the issues were, what were the problems facing Miss Fain, and what was the choices she had, what choices did she have, and how could she arrive at her decision. So it helped them to apply what we were learning as far as decision-making processes. So, and they did really, it was very good. A gal actually shared in the discussion board that she had just faced this similar thing that week. So it was impressive. So the next batch, there are 9 provisions in the Nursing Code of Ethics. So I grouped them in batches of 3. So this is the next set of 3. The nurse has authority, accountability, and responsibility for nursing practice, makes decisions and takes action consistent with the obligation to promote health and to provide optimal care. Provision 5, the nurse owes the same duties to self as to others, including the responsibility to promote health and safety, preserve wholeness of character and integrity, maintain competence, and continue personal and professional growth. Provision 6, the nurse, through individual and collective effort, establishes, maintains, and improves the ethical environment of the work setting and conditions of employment that are conducive to safe, quality health care. So with those, this is what we covered. We covered ethics in communication and technology. We talked about that. Some of the topics we talked about were stem cell research, cloning, organ trafficking, and surrogate parenting. And then we also discussed informed consent and went through all of that. In another one, we talked about ethical issues encountered with the older adult. So if you have an older adult patient, there are ethical dilemmas that you encounter more with that age bracket than you do, say, with middle age or younger, or pediatrics or something like that. So we talked about issues with cognitive impairment. So I want to play this video for you because I think it's really good. So this was a video clip, and this actually was not posted by me. This was posted by one of my students as part of the discussion. And that happened throughout the class. More and more people were getting involved and sharing and their own personal experiences. And Alzheimer's is a disease that we deal with all the time. The other thing we talked about in this segment was moral distress issues in nursing, which happens. So we talked about how leadership and causes of personal distress. How does your leader support you or not support you when you face an ethical dilemma? How does leadership play with that? And then we talked about bullying, lateral violence, and incivility, which unfortunately is ever present in nursing, and vulnerability. So the last group of provisions, provision 7, the nurse in all roles and settings advances the profession through research and scholarly inquiry, professional standards development, and the generation of both nursing and health policy. Provision 8, the nurse collaborates with other health professionals and the public to protect human rights, promote health diplomacy, and reduce health disparities. And the last one, the profession of nursing collectively through its professional organizations must articulate nursing values, maintain the integrity of the profession, and integrate principles of social justice into nursing and health policy. So with this, we talked about dilemmas at the beginning and end of life. So we talked about, we examined the principles of those principles you can read there, autonomy, justice, fidelity, benefits, non-malfeasance. Abortion, we talked about abortion. We talked about living wills and the durable medical power of attorney. And people were very willing to share their personal experiences with that in clinical settings with people who either had a living will or didn't have a living will or were a DNR, do not resuscitate, and how all that played out. And then at the end, we talked about their ethical future and what the healthcare trends and issues are going to be. And over the course of the class, I divided the class up into small groups of 3 to 4 people in a group. And they had a project they had to do. And I had presented them a list of different cases, medical cases, that they could choose from. And they had to do a presentation. Remember, this is online. Had to do a presentation for the rest of the class. And so the last week of the class, in the discussion board, they posted their work so that the rest of the class could see it and comment on it. So what I've done that I want to show you, I met with them individually as a group over the internet through, used to be Blackboard Collaborate, but now it's WebEx. And so I met with them individually. We probably met maybe for half hour and talked things through, and I answered all their questions of what they had. I showed them a couple of platforms they could use if they wanted to, but they could do whatever they wanted. And then I was available to help along the way. I stair-stepped this project through the course so that they had to submit progress reports 1 and 2 to me so that I could give them feedback on how they were doing and, you know, stuff that worked, stuff that didn't work. I don't understand what you're trying to say here. Where's this piece, kind of stuff. But that's about it. And it's what they gained from the class. And then, see if I
Yeah.
yeah. Yoo-hoo! I'm getting better at this.
I figured it out.
So here's the student comments that I got at the end of the course. A couple of them. I just pulled a couple. So from these comments, I felt like my goal for the class had been accomplished, and that was that I wanted to make ethics relevant to every day, that they could walk in their shoes when they're at the bedside or wherever they are practicing nursing and know what to do with the problems that we encounter all the time, every single day. So I'm really happy with my first attempt. And like I said, from last time, I'm planning to incorporate a little bit different kinds of things, but I'll keep some stuff because I always constantly change things. But the feedback I got from the students was they really, really enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, some of the students from the Wix presentation that you saw are currently taking my leadership management class with me. So, and they're having to do a similar type project. So they're already well underway.
How many students were in the class?
I had started off with 13 and ended up with 11.
Now, you worked this case study as part of the class.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious because over the years I've collected, literally hundreds of pages of codes of conducts and behaviors, starting out with things like the Boy Scout,
Right.
oath, promise, and law. And being familiar with Daniels, I know that Daniels successfully created within their company the environment that allowed for this type of behavior to take place. I'm curious, in this particular case, looking at the different environments, one environment would say, bringing attention to mistakes I've made and learned from is a valued element to our organization, both from a patient care standpoint and also from a business standpoint because of risk mitigation and compliance aspects. Reading from the text of this, that is not the environment. So my question is the hard question. Is as you develop these programs in your coursework, how do you instill the importance of the developing the environment and the framework when you're in a position of leadership that allows people to gravitate to ethical behavior rather than to cover their tracks, go below the surface, and do what's in their own best interest?
That's a problem, and that's a great question. I take it from both angles because I teach both this class, ethics and leadership, so I bring it both in. The environment you're talking about where you bring something forward because it's a learning experience for the organization, the individual, and everybody involved is the great environment to create. And that's your hope. You don't want to bring something forward and have it be punitive, which is the fear. So we talk about if people will share stuff, I'll share some things as the instructor or from my personal experiences. I've been a nurse for 42 years, so I'll share some of my experiences. They are I try very hard to set the stage where it's welcoming and safe for them to be able to share questions that they have. So I think it's a process. I know there's a hospital organization in town that attempts to create that environment. In my personal opinion, I don't think it's very successful.
I'm just curious because I had that experience.
I think it's based on leadership. So I think if we can impact people one at a time and teach them ethics so that when they get to be making those kinds of decisions, they choose to make the ethical right choice so that they don't throw somebody under the bus.
Yeah, I had a formative
globally
experience
mandated.
with that as a group manager. Had been with a company for 6 months, and I went and I had a significant financial issue within my area, and I went into my boss and I said, here's the situation, here are the consequences, here are the solution, fully expecting to be terminated because it was significant. And he said, well, how much did this cost us? And I told him, he said, well, that was pretty cheap to learn from that mistake. And then it was the next question, and the idea was you presented a solution to your problem, but the element of accountability was what happened. So when I got an end of year evaluation, it was can trust regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, but
So-
you had to make the hard choice yourself to take that initial step to go in and be willing to put your job and your life and your choices on the line to be willing to speak up. Because when you spoke up, you didn't know really, I don't think, what your boss's response would be. Your hope was they would respond the way they did, but they may not. They may have responded, there's no problems here.
That's why I found this case to be extremely well written and well organized, because I thought it provides all the potholes that grab people and
Yeah, there's a lot of them in there.
yeah, it really is, because the individuals are entrapped into making poor decisions because of the pressure to report some artificial results.
Yeah.
Quick question, when you developed this online class, what was your hours per week time commitment to make it run? What do you think the hours per week that you have to put in to run an online class?
Once it was going or developing it?
Once it's going.
Once it was going, I was active every day in the class. And I run the class Monday through Saturday. I give them Sunday off.
Okay.
So
ballpark.
probably depends, if I'm grading something or I'm not. On average, probably a couple hours a day. So 12 hours a week, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you're down. I'm sorry?
How many credit hours?
3.